Hello everyone, welcome to JS Gigs and my name is Deepak. Here in this tutorial, I'm going to be talking about the infrastructure that we have built and why we have built that infrastructure for this particular app that we've been building all that while. So the last video which I posted on my channel also had a comment there wherein a user actually requested me to actually go over all of these important all of these important services of AWS, which means CDN, what CDN link is all about. They wanted to know what S3 is, what EC2 is, what API gateway is, what is Cognito, and what is CDN link. So there are a few things that I'll cover in this tutorial. So first of which is like, what is a CDN link? So as a front-end developer, it would be easier for me to actually take you to the Bootstrap website, and there I would give you an idea of what CDN is all about. So if you look at over here, I'm pretty sure if you have been a front-end developer, you might have used these CDN links all that while. So what are CDN? CDN stands for Content Delivery Network. So what it means is that your content would be delivered from these edge locations. So why these are considered edge location and what is the benefit of having a CDN link in your website? The idea here is that CDN basically is an edge network which sync with your cloud provider and keeps it updated with your latest assets. And once it is updated with the latest assets, whenever a request comes to the network from a user's browser, CDN network tries to deliver it from the edge location or from the local location. So what really happens is that I'll quickly draw something over here. So this is, let's say, S3 bucket, right? S3 stands for Simple Storage Service, but I'll come to this a little bit later. Consider that it has your Angular app, right? So it has your Angular app, or rather the Angie app, and then it is actually placed here in your simple storage service of AWS, which is also known as S3, right? And assume that there are multiple geographies your application will be used, one of which is, let's say, India, right? The other one, let's say, is the US. Let's say the other location is Australia. And let's say another location would be New Zealand. So just imagine if the asset which are placed in your geography, in our case, we have been doing it with the Asia Pacific or Zone 2, wherein the server is placed in Mumbai. If your request has to come from Australia and it comes to the Asian network and then it gets back to the Australian geography, it takes a lot of time because it's going to be hopping a lot of switches and routers. Assume a scenario if the S3, the same assets which are placed in your geography are now placed in Australia as well. So without having to pay additionally to the AWS provides a content delivery network, which is also known as CDN, which provides internally an edge location. So consider this as an edge. So whenever you update anything in your S3 bucket, it automatically is shifted to all of these edge locations placed in different geographies. So let's say one CDN is placed here in Australia, the other one is here in India, and let's say there is another edge network here in edge network server here in New Zealand, right? And let's say in the US also you have an edge network. So whenever a request is made to a particular asset, this comes to it looks at the CDN locally to that geography. So in case of a US would look for the US geography edge location. Similarly, New Zealand will look for the New Zealand specific edge location over here. And similarly, Indian geography will look at the Indian edge location. So your S3 are placed at one location, however, synced and synchronized with all of these edge locations simultaneously. So what really happens is that the travel time of a request reduces. As a result, your application performance increases, and that's why we have used CDN link. So CDN is something which is also available in all of these libraries that we have been using all that while as a front-end developer. So similarly, we are going to be creating an edge location for our application that we have been building all that while, right? So that is about the CDN. Although I've already given you a brief of what S3 is all about, S3 is nothing but a simple storage service. It's a service from AWS, which lets you keep your assets or static assets into one place. So what really happens is that S3 is nothing but a dummy space where you can keep your assets and where you can keep your JavaScript and HTML and CSS files. And then this same S3 will be then linked with your CDN, or in our case, it's going to be, if you look at over here, it's going to be AWS CloudFront. So AWS CloudFront is the service provider, is the service which will provide the CDN location for us in our case. And that's how we would link it, and we will deliver it in multiple geographies. So that's about the CDN link and the S3. Now the next bit we are going to be making use of is EC2. So let me just remove all of these here. So now let me talk about what EC2s are. So let me draw a picture here. So EC2s are nothing but Elastic Compute Cloud, which is also a service from the AWS. What really happens is, let's say in our case, we are going to be building some of the APIs in Nest.js, right? So in Nest.js API, we cannot really host Nest.js a locally hosted API to the external world. We would need one place in cloud to host our services. So in that case, we are going to be basically making use of the EC2. EC2, as I said earlier, is Elastic Compute Cloud. It's basically a server provided to you in the cloud, which can be accessed over the internet with the help of API gateway. So EC2 can also be given a static address, and that's something which can be then addressed outside the network as well. But then we are not really going to be making use of this. We are rather going to be making or covering it with the API gateway, right? So this will come in the API gateway part. This is going to be the API gateway, and then we are going to be placing our EC2s inside the API gateway, and that EC2 will basically have our Nest.js service hosted inside them, right? So please excuse me for my bad handwriting, or let me draw it properly this time. So I hope I do justice in drawing this. And so let me say this is EC2, right? The work of this EC2 is to basically host our Nest.js services inside of it. Then that EC2 will be then surrounded by API gateway. And then your external world, meaning the user here, will be then accessing the CDN network, right? Or also called Amazon CloudFront. And that will instead access your API gateway and your hosted APIs, which are written in Nest.js. And that's how user would actually see the result over here, right? So that's how the structure is going to be. And the Cognito is nothing but another service from the AWS, which will provide authentication and authorization mechanism to us. Let's say if a user wishes to access authenticated route or route which are secured behind the authentication layer, will be then that's when the Cognito or AWS Cognito will come into play and will provide you a JWT token, and that's something which we have already discussed in the previous tutorial. So this is how the structure of your application going to be. I think it should be pretty clear now what CDN is all about, what S3 and EC2 API gateway and Cognito is all about, and how we're going to be making use of all of these. So if we go back to the previous diagram of ours, I hope that it should be making sense to all of those who have not really worked with the cloud earlier, that why have I kept all these AWS CloudFront, S3, EC2 and API gateway, right? So please do write in the comment section below if you want to know more about anything, any one of these. I'll try to create a separate video tutorial around it, but otherwise I'll consider this as good enough for a front-end developer to start their cloud journey. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. If you have not really subscribed to my channel, please do so. And if you're liking my work, please hit a bell icon and also subscribe to my channel. Also like the videos that I've been making. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be seeing you in the next tutorial where I'll cover start writing and creating the AWS infrastructure ground up. So stay tuned and thank you.